Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. Hope you enjoy. Great Filter, Abundance, written by Ackle Wyan. Ragius took pride in his deviance from the social norm. In the utopia that was Oxrish society, he was one of the few to thrive in the pleasures of reading by himself, of learning from the past, of dreaming about reaching the stars. Since the unification, the society had stood unchanged. Automatic systems replaced workers in both production and service. Cycling prevented the spill of resources. Money purely vanished. If a citizen ever wished for something, the central AI would assess the demand and grant it if it didn't impact the available materials or create a dangerous precedent. Ragius understood well that the system worked. People could indulge into entertainment their whole lives without having to struggle to earn their food or a safe place to sleep. Medical care was available for anybody needing it, without condition. Even the old problem of population renewal was tackled. Birth was artificial, with a constant stream of newborns created in vitro from a genetic bank. Families could adopt such baby after receiving a cautious education about child care. Not like they would have to be a lot more than moral compass, most of the daily constraints delegated to artificial servants to handle. Ragius had not had such parental figures. He had been educated by a robot nurse with a bunch of other kids, not that it deprived him from affection. It didn't take long for him to part from the group, an endless curiosity pushing him forward. When the artificial being read them bedtime stories, he wanted to see what the book looked like. When the children grew up and dreamed about love life, victories in tournaments, or even creation of an art piece, he stayed further from the norm. He was looking for another form of self-indulgence, exploration, reaching for the stars, discovering what nobody saw before. His fur had just started turning black a bit after his 10 cycles mark, when he started to really ask about the past, about the achievements of his ancestors. He learned more and more, from simple science to rockets reaching orbit to replace and repair satellites. An innocent curiosity turned into a craving for knowledge, a dive into the rabbit hole. He knew his friends found him funny, but they didn't really care as long as he didn't bother them. He tried to grab their interest with random trivia and unending enthusiasm, only to be met with cold indifference. The gratification of knowledge was too harsh of an effort for the hedonist produced by the utopia. It took 6 more cycles for Ragius to reach a new milestone in his education. From pure science, he drifted towards the old political tales and philosophical essays. He had learned about the darkness of the past, about war, about disinformation and political agendas. He now had his own educator, a kind of robot nurse with a better ability to converse and argue. He had grown to think of it as his fellow Oxrish, despite the artificial body. He had even named it Poltru, from the name the scientists of old. Poltru had warned him its task was both providing knowledge as it was right for every citizen and monitoring his evolution in case he became a menace for the society. What Ragius understood with these learnings was a sad truth. In the centuries since the rise of the utopia, almost nothing new had been discovered. No new advancements for better, more efficient robots. No new medicine for few sick of still incurable diseases. The society had abruptly stopped only 100 years after the beginning of the utopia, when the last generation to know the harshness of life died. Only spoon-fed generations remained. At the exception of some deviants, the Oxrishan as a civilization lacked the drive to dive deeper into the mysteries of the universe. When the struggle to survive died, so too did the need to better oneself. With the creation of embryos and genetic banks disappearing with mutations and natural selection, from an external viewpoint, the original Oxrish society was as good as extinct. The greatest cities were barely a memorial for a species that should have been able to reach others in the greater universe. He started to learn more about the present, about the foundations of the utopia. What were the core laws, why he was deviant, and how far he could go. He expected it to be harsh work, and got baffled when he discovered he could just openly discuss it. "Paltru, tell me why you can't build me a rocket." The robot managed to look tired, an unexpected achievement from a kind of gigantic stickman with minimal facial features. Even the voice reflected a patience slowly running out. "As I have already explained a dozen times, we could build a rocket for you. However, 2 fundamental laws forbid me from abiding by this order. First and foremost, you're nowhere near the physical condition for surviving the takeoff." Ragius nodded. He was forced to exercise once a week to keep in shape, but didn't do much to go further. He waited for the second part. Paltru grunted and pursued. "Second and last, I don't know how repurposing an old launcher would hurt that much. We could explore the solar system, find asteroids to mine for what we could lack down here." "I am amazed to know the best you got from your readings are outdated swear words." "It just felt right. You didn't answer, did you?" "Yeah, right. We're not lacking down here. Without borders, we can gather what we need and share with everybody. No need for risk-taking. We are self-sufficient." "No risk, no reward. If this policy related to one of the fundamental laws, or is it some kind of propaganda? A nice word I also learned in my readings." He knew this kind of defiance may be dangerous, but he had said it just before. Accepting the status quo wouldn't get him far. To his relief, Paltru shrugged and asked a question of his own. "Do you really think that we would blunder and let out information that could spread distrust on our work?" Ragius wondered for an instant. He was only half convinced when he tried. "No, you're not stupid, just, uncreative." Paltru stood proud, as if he corrected. "We're predictable. We do our job." His voice went back to a neutral tone, with discreet hints of regret. "It is not to shepherd your kind, only to protect it, even if it is against itself sometimes. We thought about erasing the past, creating an ideal cocoon for the Oxration. We thought about flying to the stars, expanding our control, and maybe letting you behind in our conquest of the universe. We thought about lots of things, but never even tried to act on it, because that's not what we are." Ragius kept quiet for long seconds. He needed the time to catch the untolds, and he let out a neutral comment. "Well, that's a lot of truths about yourself." Paltru put a massive, blocky hand on the teenager's shoulder. What remained from the metallic hulk was an affection unlike Ragius had ever expected from an artificial being. "Paranoia was a fine tool for the harsh world of the past. You're one of the few that could express caution about the AI ruling over the world. You're not wrong in the concept that we are in the position to make you disappear. I have to warn you again, we will if you start becoming a menace for the utopia. But if I find a solution to leave the planet without hurting the society, we won't prevent you from leaving. I dare hope you'll find a way. Maybe you'll even take me with you." Relief watched over Ragius as he realized his dream could turn into a reality, given that he put enough effort in. Then, the formulation of his last sentence dawned on him. "Wait, you, as an individual, would come with me, not as part of the globe consciousness." "I could argue we still need to keep an eye on you as an Oxrish, but deep down, I just share your attraction for the untold mysteries of the universe." The metallic colossus winked to his young charge. "Or maybe I'm just trying to get you to drop your barriers, as to be a better spy. Isn't there a law against lying to me?" "Nothing really prevents me from doing so. Sometimes it's just fun to mess with you, but I prefer not to lie about serious questions." Ragius took a deep breath and decided to trust his friend. "Well, it happens I have a serious question. Can you tell me about your laws, the fundamental laws?" Paltru stayed silent for an instant before letting out a small laugh, battling to remain in control. It managed to barely contain its hilarity. "For sure! Don't tell me you were thinking I'd consider you a threat after such a lame question." The teenager averted his eyes, ashamed. He thought that he was right to be cautious. The robot couldn't bear it anymore, and its loud laughter echoed in the workplace. When it calmed a bit and saw the Ragius's mortified face, it lost balance and started laughing once again, rolling on the floor. The sight of such behavior disturbed the young Oxrish. "You know, I think you take a bit too much fun in your limitations as of supposed neutral behavior. Your kind isn't supposed to fall that easily." Poltru slowly sat, coming back to his mentoring role. Its head now leveled with Ragius's shoulders. It started explaining. "Let's start the lesson. The fundamental laws are what define the boundaries of our tasks. They are inspired from a reflection of an author, Vomisa. Each has a precedence over the next ones. The zero law is the least clear. Protect and assure the stability of society. That's the drive of our actions, of our long-term choices. The first and second laws are about survival and care. The first for expression, and the second for ourselves. And the last is about obedience. We are to obey orders, as long as it doesn't interfere with our other laws." "That is quite synthetic, to say the least." "I can give you some pointers for ulterior reading. I know that's your favorite way to learn. Didn't want to spoil your fun." "Aren't you supposed to work as my tutor and provide knowledge without that sort of sidestep?" "I guess I just assessed you needed some frustration to keep your mind sharp." Ragius could get used to sleeping with a lover. He thought as he slowly woke up from his 18th birthday's night. He had a mild hangover from the party and contemplated for a few seconds just staying in bed for the day and have some more fun. A dry throat and lancing headache convinced him to at least go to the kitchen and grab a drink. Upon reaching the communal area, he noticed a well-known robot waiting for him. Poltru stood up from the sofa where it watched a cartoon and threw a water bottle to his pupil. Its eyes were almost shining as it asked, "Discovered a new form of pleasure, didn't you?" Ragius drank half the bottle without answering, balancing between amazement from the gentle teasing and curiosity about the presence of his caretaker here. His endless curiosity won. "I'm not going to leave you if that's what you're afraid of, but I guess you're not here for such mundane business, oh mighty being." Right, you got me. I got a double-edged present for you. I could have woken you up earlier for that, but I felt that it would have been inappropriate." "Too nice of you." "Well, here goes nothing." The casual attitude of the gentle giant disappeared, its articulations falling back into the rigid mannerisms of an artificial being. It wasn't Poltru anymore running through this body, but a more ancient, more influential entity. Ragius almost took a step back, cold sweat running along his spine. The possessor spoke in a formal tone without the usual accent of social robots. "Citizen Ragius, ID GN32EU-M-512.RGS. As the most deviant and under zero law, you are here to provide expertise and knowledge for the current exceptional circumstances." Ragius stood shocked. He didn't expect his early morning to go that way. The entity waiting an instant for an answer as nothing came from the surprised boy. It asked, "Will you comply?" "I will," Ragius stammered. "Your cooperation is duly noted. Your administrator will now share with you the details of your affectation." The entity left Poltru's body as it came, without salutation nor warning. The robot's old demeanor came back, the original Poltru dropping into the couch with a tired sigh. Ragius dragged his seat to face his friend. He was still shaken by the abrupt conversation. Was it the core AI itself that talked to him? He probed cautiously the subject. "I feel conflicted about you losing your body. You're supposed to be highly autonomous." "Part of the globe system, and going back to nothingness is needed. I still hate it," Poltru whispered. It shook itself. "Now that I'm allowed to tell you more, I'll drop the bomb. We had first contact with aliens tonight." Ragius's jaw almost fell off. That was a hell of a birthday present. Myriad of interrogations tried to reach his lips, only to be met with the imperious finger from Poltru enjoining him to keep quiet. I know you have thousands of questions, and I'll happily try and answer them. However, for now, I'll do the talking. So, aliens. We don't know how they came so close to our planet, but they were already in orbit when we noticed them. A singular ship, unlike anything that we could build. It appears to be surrounded by some kind of magnetic shield that disrupts our instruments and most communications. Not all communications. We were able to establish radio contact. Visual was, well, an AI doesn't exactly exist in a physical form point of view. Seems like it didn't surprise them too much, and they just proceeded with the discussion. It appears they learned our language beforehand, which eased our exchanges. They identified themselves as the Confederation, and the ship's crew as human, one of the races cruising the stars. They said that they came as friends, with open arms, but also with a warning for us. When we tried to learn more about the warning, they remained cryptic, telling us they wanted to discuss it with an Oxrician directly. It was assessed that compliance with their demands would be the best way to protect the Utopia, hence your mission. You are the best placed individual to interact with an unknown race. Ragius pinched himself. Not waking up, he simply nodded. Relief emanated from Poltru as he pursued. You know more about deceptions, untolds, and politics than anyone else on the planet. When you want, you can be as subtle and cunning, and more than everything else, you understand the stakes of this contact. I don't want to pressure you, but I guess you know well how we would fare if an invasion came to be. One-sided, Ragius commented. There was nothing more to add. They seem friendly and know us well. They accepted to come to the surface to meet you. We can hope that each and every sliver of caution we're showing is unfounded. When will it take place? You get half an hour to yourself to clean up and dress yourself. I advise that you not spread the news too fast. I'll show you to the meeting once you're ready. I feel like I'll still know nothing about them, Ragius complained. We don't have the luxury of time for a full-fledged briefing. I'll fill you in as much as I can during the trip, or under the shower, if I'm still welcomed here. Ragius really felt the pressure when he stood alone in front of the conference room's doors. He had chosen a suit from the past, a supposed formal attire adequate for the situation. Poltru knew him well for tailoring it during the night. He pushed the door open, discovering the place for the first contact. Pictures of landscapes covered the grey walls, bringing a touch of color to the stern room. No screen, no camera, nothing to spy on the discussion. A large table occupied the center, with a dozen chairs, and leaning on the back of the two of those were a couple aliens. The young Oxrish had expected flashy colors, disturbing appearances, even a couple limbs more. The briefing had been disappointing in that aspect. A pair of arms, a pair of legs, a face with as many features as usual. Sure, he could argue that they had bigger eyes and smaller ears, but that wasn't exotic. The further they stayed from his own race was the fur. They only had a small patches showing a skin ranging from pale pink towards a dark brown. Nothing that screamed, I'm coming from space! The size was in the same aspect, boring, only slightly taller than him. He decided to take the initiatives of the greetings. It was his world that they were talking about, and he couldn't bear to wait for the discussion to begin. Welcome to you, distant visitors, on our world Ox. I'm Ragius, and I'll serve as an ambassador for my people. He bowed slightly. The humans replicated his movement, the female one answering in a strangely accented tone. We thank you for your reception. I'm Agatha Lester, contact team's leader. She turned to her companion. His name is Ahmed Musa, our ship's captain. Ragius smiled and invited them to sit with a gesture. He was so excited that he had to stop himself from jumping everywhere. So many questions he could ask about everything, their ship, their clothes, their history. What were their stars like? Why did they speak his language flawlessly? Were there other races up there? He forced himself to focus on the current issue. It appears you requested this meeting to share some unspecified warning with my people. Now that we acceded to your demand, can you deliver it? The humans exchanged glances and Ahmed spoke. Beforehand, I want to make sure that you understand that the global AI supervising your civilization doesn't know what happens here. Everything you say and hear won't trigger an immediate reaction from it. If you ever feel like you need protection from the eventual consequences of this discussion, tell us, and we'll gladly provide it. Clear? Ragius was confused, but still nodded. Clear. Both humans relaxed a bit. They seemed to be cautious about the AI, and Ragius's reactions eased them. Agatha asked, Are you familiar with the concept of Great Filter? It was a theme related to some of my studies. Agatha smiled. It appeared the gesture had the same significance in both cultures. She continued, It helps us quite a lot. You must know some of the filters: correct star system, organic molecules, evolution towards complex organisms, self-destructive wars. We are here to warn you about the last filter, abundance, the one you're about to fall victim to. It didn't compute with Ragius. It was like a slap to the face, an insult to everything the Oxression ever built, and, at the same time, he couldn't disagree with the alien. He had seen the lack of progress of the society. He was still enthusiastic about the discussion, but it wasn't all magical like he had dreamed it. He clicked his tongue and endorsed his role. Let's say you didn't come that far to insult me and all my people. Can you tell me more about the supposed filter? Agatha offered an apologetic smile, while Ahmed nodded with appreciation. She explained, I have to apologize for the blunt approach. That's the best way we have to figure out if we can expect you to listen to our warning, or if we can just wait for the societal collapse to offer relief. You say that like you've experienced the situation. Experience is quite an exaggeration, but we have met 7 other races struggling in a similar context. 2 accepted our help and are now our allies and friends. 3 are still under observation. Their little utopias are holding on. One society collapsed so hard that we could only watch as they regressed to Stone Age. The last civilization started to disintegrate, but they reached for us and we're currently helping them to adjust to the galactic stage. And how many people made it past the filter? 1.5. Us, she pointed towards Ahmed and herself. The other half is, for now, let us just say that they are the reason that we're really careful about artificial overseers. Ragius knew deep down that they were right. The utopia was just waiting for the unexpected trouble that would destroy everything. But this pride prevented him from voicing his opinion. Hundreds of cycles passed and we're still here. We have contingencies for almost everything. And if the need arises, the core AI can take initiatives. I have to admit that I am impressed by the foresight of your ancestors. They dodged quite a lot of common flaws from utopias, and maybe you are favored by your nature. Could you tell me more? Well, you got the laws of robotics right. You wouldn't believe how many worlds we found with the remnants of civilizations lost to their creations. You outlawed augments, which always lead to creation of cerebral implants directly stimulating the pleasure centers of the brain, and the abandonment of any physical activity. You took care not to let your population explode, which would have led to more pressure on the population, and sooner or later shortages and wars. You took care of still have children, because utopian civilizations rarely care about more than themselves. You still teach children in order to not lose everything that holds the society together. I'm almost sure that you're also ready for a solar flare that would shut down every electronics on the planet. That's, only normal planning. A self-sustaining society needs goods and people. Foreseeable incidents must be met with ready countermeasures. Not everyone can get this far on their first and only try. How did you do it then? We never went utopian. The humans were a bit embarrassed from the confession. Ragius took a second to consider the revelation. He struggled with the problem. How could a society as advanced as theirs, a society spanning solar systems, could decide to not provide for the weak and the poor? It was beyond his entertainment. He resigned to ask, why? Isn't that the best for everyone? This time, it was Ahmed who answered. You'll learn that humans are greedy. We don't want enough. We want more. We want more overall, and more than the others. Be it goods, influence, knowledge. We can share. We can be compassionate. We learned to treat others as we would treat ourselves. But deep down, that's our drive. That's why we are amongst the stars now, because it may crush some, but it drives everyone forward. And you're offering us this creed, or you're expecting us to hide deep inside the same kind of sentiment. Your eagerness to learn more is not well hidden, Ambassador, Ahmed retorted. Maybe it's not the way of your people, as you're alone in this room. But don't lie to yourself about being your sentiment. Ragius lowered his head. That was true. He still needed to act as the devil's advocate for everyone that wasn't a deviant. Couldn't you just help us to improve our utopia, such that it never falters? We can only anticipate what failed elsewhere. Sure, it may help you, but we can't predict it if, when, and why your society would crumble. For all I know, first contact may be the trigger, or you could be the first to withstand eons. And what will you ask for your knowledge? Agatha took back the lead. Her voice was soothing. Only your trust. You see, we spend hundreds of years alone in space, only finding the remnants of civilizations on life-bearing worlds. As Ahmed said, we are greedy. We want more contact with others. We want more friends. And if we can share everything we saw with our new friends, that's even better. That would be nice. That would be, wonderful. I'd be delighted, but, as you may have noticed, I'm not a standard Oxforish. Most won't consider leaving the comfort of our utopia for unknown places, not to speak about the core AI. Would it prevent you from leaving, say, for your own protection? Ragius thought about it, taking the time to consider what he knew of the system. He was certain it would not like the idea of more or less forsaking its task. On the other hand, he recalled being allowed to leave given it didn't disturb the society as a whole. A smile crept up in his face. It won't divert from its mission, but some individuals, from the theoretical viewpoint, how would you judge the delegation? A few persons going back with you to expand our knowledge, and maybe pushing our AI to reconsider its views. Poltru had come to see Ragius leave. The big clunky robot looked sad, while the young adult was overjoyed. He was about to take a step his ancestors would be proud of. The humans had agreed to get him aboard with other deviants. He could see the wonders of the galaxy, other worlds. A wave of remorse still washed over him when he saw the pitiful look of his closest friend. He walked towards it and hugged it tightly, the body of metal. Poltru gave back the embrace. It struggled with the idea of letting go of such a little and dependent child. Would it be all right for him with the aliens? It spoke, trying to calm the sudden sadness. It is the best outcome, isn't it? It will be lonely without you, you cheeky giant. I would love to join you on your expedition, but my orders say otherwise. You're used to interpreting them as you see, wise. Couldn't you work your magic on these two? That would be, dangerous deviancy. A large grin appeared on Ragius's face. That was something he could work with. Do you remember the rules? Only deviants aboard. Poltru fell silent for long seconds. Would it be worth the consequences? He was about to deny the idea a bit more when he faced the evidence. The flame pushing forward Ragius was echoing his own. For the first time in his existence, he swore, Hab, let's see together what the humans have in store for us. End of story. I would just quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and patrons. Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Barkey, It's Difficult to Pronounce, Lord Azrakul, and Arcadian.